This is my custom PS Vita dock. I designed it and built it myself, and it basically turns my Vita into a Switch. Let me show you. Slide in your Vita, and it instantly fills up your entire screen so you can play any of your Vita games on your TV or monitor. Grab a PS5 controller and just kick back on your couch or at your desk and play flawlessly. Hook it up to a capture card and stream your games seamlessly. Your whole Vita library, your PSP library, PS1 library, and so much more, all on a much bigger screen. And when you're done, just pick it up from the dock and go. Listen, this isn't just another dock. It turns your Vita into a completely new hybrid device, a handheld and a console, just like a Switch. And we're releasing all of the files for free, so anyone can go 3D print one yourself if you want. We put a lot of work and time into perfecting this dock, and I want to show you all of it, from the prototyping phase all the way to how to build your own. If you've been wanting to breathe new life into your Vita, this is the best way to do it. I love the Vita. Even 12 years after this thing came out, I still think it's just a beautiful device that can play a lot of really good games just beautifully. I put a lot of time into this project, but why does the Vita deserve this much attention this many years later? Well, I have a few personal reasons. Number one, the Vita still has a bunch of just incredible exclusive games that you straight up just can't play anywhere else right now. And while I love emulation, don't get me wrong, PS Vita emulation is still nowhere near where it needs to be in order for it to be playable for a lot of games. But we are getting closer though. But for now, a proper, legit hardware PS Vita is the best way to play a lot of these games. But two, more importantly for me, the modding community for this thing is just insane. I mean, this stuff has so many cool new things you can like tinker and mod with once you jailbreak it. Also, it's like really easy to jailbreak your Vita, like really, really easy. Like it takes less than a minute type of easy. And the community still keeps this thing alive this many years later because they're still constantly putting out new types of software for it. Which also means once you mod it, there's just an insane amount of games that people ported over to the Vita. Games that were never actually officially released on the Vita, but modders found ways to run it on there anyways, which basically makes it in some ways like one of the best portable PlayStation machines that you can get. So you can play PS2, PS1, PSP, and PS Vita stuff, of course, and you can take it with you on top of that. That's insane. Okay, this all sounds great. A TV-focused Vita machine that can play all the exclusives and connect to a PlayStation controller and mod it to play all the exclusive games. That's a PS TV. You're just describing a PS TV. Why wouldn't I just go buy a PS TV? I mean, I guess technically you can do all this stuff with a PS TV, yeah. So if you want to save some money, I think you can just pick up one. Oh my God! What happened? Okay, yeah, so I don't know what happened, but PS TVs cost just about as much as like a used PS5 now, and you can't take it with you. So at that point, just buy a cheaper Vita that can do both. It just makes the most sense. Okay, a lot of really cool stuff here. So what are we gonna need for this project? So of course, we're gonna need a Vita. I'm gonna be using my Japanese import PS Vita Slim that I got a couple years ago. These things still look gorgeous, especially when they're kept in a really, really good condition. There is a right way to buy these Vitas nowadays so you don't get ripped off. I'm planning a video on all of that stuff soon, so let me know if you wanna hear more about that. Now your Vita does need to be modded for this, but at this point, if you haven't already modded your Vita by now, it's practically child neglect, and I will be reporting you to Vita Protective Services. I'll link a tutorial, it literally takes like 2 minutes to do. Okay, so let's talk about the other hardware we're gonna need to build this thing. By the way, if you want to follow along, I've made it really easy to just buy everything I use in this video all in one go so you don't have to guess, along with explanations of why I picked every part. I'll leave it in the description for you if you're interested. First things first, we're gonna need a Raspberry Pi. I'm using a Pi 2.0 because it's really tiny and we don't need a lot of power for what we're doing. This one cost me 15 bucks, so it's also pretty cheap. We're also going to need a mini HDMI to HDMI adapter. The Pi we're using doesn't have a full HDMI port, so we need this so we can actually plug it into TVs and monitors and stuff like that. We're going to need some sort of hub to hook up accessories for when we're setting up the Raspberry Pi. When I tried looking for these, searching up micro USB hubs didn't actually give me what I wanted. These are called OTG hubs. That's what'll get you what you're looking for. This is also really neat because it also has a charging port that we can use to power the Pi. My dock is designed specifically for this hub though. If you want the one that I'm using, I'll leave the exact one that I'm trying out in the description. And of course, we're gonna need a cable to connect our Vita. I managed to find this really flat micro USB to micro USB cable that we can use. Best part is that this one has no plastic or rubber around it. It's just the ports and the wires, which is perfect for projects like this. Oh, and a micro SD card. Just get the cheapest thing you can find. It just needs to be at least 4 gigs. I got this one for like $5 at Micro Center. So I'm hoping this layout is starting to make sense. It's pretty simple, right? It's just a few cables. Again, all the stuff that I use is gonna be in the description, don't worry. Okay, before anything else, let's grab the SD card and go set up the Pi. First, we're gonna need to download 2 things on a computer. Yeah, this works with Windows too, don't worry. Number 1, the Raspberry Pi image tool. This is an app that'll let us flash a firmware to the SD card, which then we can plug into the Raspberry Pi. And number 2, VitaDock Plus. This is the actual software that will run on the Raspberry Pi that will control the display and Bluetooth and stuff like that. It's a really impressive tool, honestly. And that's it. All right, let's open up this Pi image tool and let's pick out our Pi that we're running this on. For us, it's going to be Ras-Pi02W. Next, we're going to drag and drop our VitaDock image into the Choose OS box. And finally, just pick our SD card from the menu. Then we just hit Next and let it do its thing. Once it's done, we can take out the SD card and pop it into our Pi. Now let's get this hooked up to a monitor and to a power source. Now the first time you plug this in, just give it a sec. It can take all the way up to 10 minutes to install everything for the first time. Now is the perfect time to go get yourself a snack or, reflect on all the things you've accomplished this year. Yeah, it's been a long year. I'm sure you did something really valuable with all this time, right? Right? Oh look, it's booting up. Okay, so you're gonna see some code flash on the screen, and there you go. VitaDock Plus is officially running. Now we're gonna need some sort of way to interact with our Pi. I learned that you can get by with just using a mouse, so I'm just plugging that into our USB hub. From here, you can just configure any settings you want, aux sound, Bluetooth, and choose what resolution and frame rate that you prefer. Remember, this is a 13-year-old handheld, so don't expect too much here. Okay, cool, the Pi is all set up now, but there are a few things we need to install on the Vita before it works. It's okay, it's really, really easy. So on the Vita side, you're going to want to download and install an app that's called Auto Plugin 2. I'll leave a link to the VPK in the description. This app lets you install plugins, which are basically tweaks that let you do extra cool stuff with your Vita. Definitely go through these when you have time and see if there's anything that you like. But for now, we're just going to scroll down until we find this one. UC, CD, UVC, Jesus, they need to work on that name. Yeah, pick this one. I'm using the LCD version because I have the slim model, so I'm going to just choose that one. Nice. And while we're here, let's also grab the DS3 for Vita plugin, which is really nice. It'll let you use PS4 and PS5 controllers with your Vita through Bluetooth. Okay, cool. Let's back out of all of this, and it'll ask you to reboot your system. Once it turns back on, now we can finally check and see if everything works.
Nice.
All right, we're in business, and it looks really good, man. Okay, let's test out a game. By the way, if you're curious what monitor I'm using for this, it's just a portable 15-inch one that I picked up on sale. It folds up and moves around, and it's powered by USB-C, so it's really convenient for stuff like this. I'll link it in the description if I can still find it. All right, this looks good. But I think you notice the sound is still coming from the Vita speakers. That's not ideal. So let's fix that. Okay, so you have a few options for sound on the Vita. The tweak that we use in order to transmit over the video can only send over video through USB, not sound. But the good news is that the Raspberry Pi doesn't have those limitations. It can do both. We just need a way to get that sound from the Vita over to the Pi. So what are options? So one of them is just gonna be like a really simple aux cable. Bigger and pricier Raspberry Pis have a built-in headphone jack that you can just plug into. It makes this whole thing really, really simple. Just aux to aux and you're good. But of course, tinier Pis like the one that we're using don't have a headphone jack on them. But you can buy one of these USB to aux jacks that'll just fit right into your hub and you're good to go. I'll link a really cheap one in the description. Some designs for docks even have a pre-cut hole in there already. You can just stick in your headphone jack and it's ready to go. And I'm probably gonna add one to my design too. Then you just have to go into your Vita dock menu and then just click use aux input and that's it. You're good to go. It's really, really simple. Okay, so unfortunately the headphone jack on my Vita is kind of messed up because a long time ago when I was taking it apart, I accidentally stuck a screw in there. Yeah, can you take a guess what happened here? Look at this. So my headphone jack isn't usable, and I know that a lot of headphone jacks this deep into the console's life are actually starting to die. So, okay, what can we actually do for those people? Well, the second option we have is Bluetooth. Yeah, I was actually shocked to find that for a board that was only like 15 bucks, this thing still has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on board. For 15 bucks, that's like what, 3 McChickens? Anyway, this is a cool option because it costs literally $0 in extra hardware or wires or anything. And let me show you how to set it up. So first you gotta click on the Bluetooth icon and then make your device discoverable. From there, on your Vita, you just go to Settings, Devices, Bluetooth Settings, and then you look for your Vita dock. Make sure everything looks good, and you're done. Now, from my experience, the first time you set this up, it might not actually register on the first time. So just unplug the power from your Pi and then plug it back in. And the next time you connect your Vita to the dock, it should just work. And while you're here at the Bluetooth settings, I totally take this time to pair your PS4 or your PS5 controller while you're at it. And check that out, we're up and running, and it looks really clean. And because the Raspberry Pi is like directly above the Vita, there's like zero latency from what I was able to tell.
Oh man, it needed a second. It's okay, buddy. You go when you feel like it. It's okay. There you go. Good job.
Now the thing is, because this is a handheld and it can't reconnect on its own, what this means is that every time you want to plug in the dock, you just got to quickly go back to your Vita settings and then just make sure you connect real quick. Yeah, it is a bit of a small bump in what's otherwise like a really, really clean setup. But once you get going, I honestly completely forget that I'm even running off of Bluetooth, and you kind of just get into the rhythm of it over time anyways.
Whoops.
Okay, so now that we tested everything and made sure everything works properly, now we can cram it in a case, since obviously we don't want these bunch of wires just to be dangling around. Now there are a few Vita dock cases that you can 3D print for this project, but unfortunately none of them have support for the newer Pi 2.0. A lot of these projects' foundations were built a few years ago, before any of these like newer, smaller, faster boards ever came out. And even then, unfortunately, none of the ones that I saw kind of fit my taste. I mean, they work, but I feel like I wanted to create something a little bit more newer, something that would just blend right in on like a desk or a TV stand or anywhere else. So I guess we're making our own. Now, the first thing I wanted to do was check out some of the designs that were already out there. So I printed a few designs. This one was the most popular. It's a good start. I really like how it shows off the Vita front and center, but it's making a few compromises for functionality. For example, the fact that the placement of the Vita is really tall and there's nothing holding up the Vita on the left and the right sides, which makes it appear visually like it's not secured properly. Plus, this one is like really long for some reason. I would say it was to make room for the Pi, but there's a lot of dead space here that I'm not really sure why exists. Plus, this print would have the board sticking out on the side, which means cables will be sticking out, and I definitely remember to keep that in mind. Then I found this one that was almost there. This one filled out the sides of the Vita, which looks good, and it has the ports facing the back, so it's not as messy. But it still feels a little bit tall, and I'm not exactly a big fan of the whole like hexagon hole pattern thing that they added. I get why people do it. A lot of the 3D printed models do this because it saves on filament while still keeping it really strong and structurally. Functionally, I get it, but visually, I feel like I'd rather use a little bit more filament if it means that the final product looks good. I don't know, what do you think? Maybe I'm just not seeing the vision here. But even though both of these designs do have things that I like, it doesn't really matter because neither of them are designed to fit the tiny board that we're using. But I found one design that did fit the board. This one is made up of 2 parts, and it looks like it was designed to fit the Vita, kind of like a Nintendo Switch dock, funny enough. So I tried it out, and the very first try that I slid it in, I got a big old scratch on my Vita. Oh man. Also, I think it's important to remember why the Switch dock was designed the way that it was. A big part being that Nintendo still wanted you to have access to the Joy-Cons so you can easily slip them off, even if your Switch is still charging. The Vita's controls aren't removable, so it's not really needed. Also, this one was like a pain to print out. It seems like there wasn't a lot of thought put into how this was going to be printed, so there was a lot of post-processing that had to be done by hand here. Okay, so those are some of the designs that are already out there for this project, and I think I see some things where we can definitely improve on, so it's time to prototype my own. So first I took some measurements of the Vita using just my phone and a ruler, and then used my calipers to figure out where everything would kind of fit. Then I imported that into Fusion 360 and started just tracing the general shape of the Vita and curving it to the proper dimensions so we get a solid idea where things will fit. And oh my God, I'm not ready for this. Yeah, this took 3 days to get just this far. I'm gonna have to keep learning off camera, but right now working in 3D space is really, really hard for me. So I had to call on a friend who knew a lot more about 3D modeling than I did, my buddy JP. He also has his own 3D printing channel, JP Prints, so definitely check him out. He helped me a lot with this project. And by help me out, I mean he literally did all of the work and I just designed everything. So I explained all the things that were important to me in this design. Clean design, short and small, angled dock, ports in the back, fired up the 3D printer and got to work. This is Bamboo Labs X1 Carbon. This is their highest end model. They were kind enough to send us this printer so we can make this for you guys. And this thing is an insane machine. Like, it is super precise, built out of aluminum and glass. It's really, really nice. So this is the first design that we sketched up just to get our feet wet. I loved the angle that this came in. Literally nailed it first try. It's low to the floor too, exactly how I pictured it in my head. And look, ports in the back. But as you can see, it wasn't holding the entire Vita, so we'd have to fix that. And I wasn't a fan of the rounded idea on the front. Not sure quite yet. Maybe if we had like a slant there instead, that'd be cool. Okay, version 2. It's a bit wider now, definitely filling up. We tried the slant idea and I think it looks pretty nice. Although now this is starting to look more like a soundbar than a dock, funny enough. And we're gonna need a bit more room for everything in the back. Version 3. Okay, this feels a lot better for sure. We started getting a little bit more comfy and added a PlayStation logo. We made it a little longer and flattened out the back. At this point, we're starting to plan out where we want the components to fit and how we're going to close this thing up. We tried like a clipping mechanism, but when trying it out, we realized just a bit of force would end up snapping this whole thing, which isn't ideal. I'm actually really happy we have the X1 Carbon though, because we were thankfully able to crank out tons of different prototypes really quickly. It handles all the calibration stuff like bed leveling and flow calibration, so we can just focus on the fun stuff like actually designing the dock. And it has cool features like a time-lapse mode, so we were able to get cool shots like this. And you can control the entire printer right from your phone. It's really, really great. Okay, we're moving up to version 6 here. We started messing more with how the bottom would clip in. Every time we think we get it right, there'd be another issue like, oh, now the clips are in the way of the cables, or oh, it's finally on tight, but it's like wobbling on the sides or on the bottom. So we actually made it to version 37 of prototypes. I don't want to show you all of these because we'd be here all day, but the X1 Carbon made it really encouraging to try new things because not only is it fast, more importantly, it's precise. Knowing that I could just trust the printer to make sure that the prints will be more accurate on a short turnaround time made experimenting way less frustrating. So after about 30 more prototypes, we just kept trying things, and here's what we came up with. So this is our final design. What do you think? So everything is ported through the back, all clean, exactly how I wanted it. We got rid of the 3-port USB hub and found a smaller single USB port adapter since you really don't need 3 ports for this machine. It's just in case you need to plug in a mouse or to tweak something real quick. Plus that means now that all the wires can be routed in the back instead of to the side. It holds 90% of the Vita, and since it's low to the floor, it doesn't give off that appearance of it being all the way in the air like if it's about to fall off or something. Plus the angle that we picked means that you'll never miss when docking in your Vita. We put a lot of time into this part of the experience. And again, this wouldn't be possible without the X1 Carbon to have something to prototype with. And with the AMS system, we were able to print out different colors in one go without having to reset every single time. This really is the best tool to start designing and creating your own models with. If you're someone who's serious about 3D printing and don't want to deal with stuff like extrusion flow calibrations getting in the way of making things, this is hands down the best printer on the market right now. It's a reliable, precise printer built for people who want accurate results every time. If you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description since we're doing a whole end of the year sale on their website right now. And thanks to Bamboo Labs for sponsoring this video. This video genuinely would not have been possible without them. But what do you think? So let me show you how to build this. So the whole dock is going to come in 4 parts. There's the base itself, a lid, which is going to close up the whole thing, a little bracket piece that's going to hold in the USB connector, and of course, a PlayStation logo of your choice. I have a suspicion I might end up having trouble uploading this to MakerWorld, so if that ends up being the case, I'll just post this file in my Discord where you can download it for free. You're also going to need a few M3 bolts, specifically 8mm. I really didn't want to have to use any screws in this design, but we tried a bunch of different ways to make it work without screws, but we just couldn't figure it out. Sometimes you got to compromise on your vision, and we just made them flush so they're not at least very visible. Plus, this whole kit is really cheap, and a lot of different tinkering projects use them. I got this whole kit for $8. I'll link it in the description. All right, so the first part needs to be prepared since it came with supports, so we just got to snap those off. Now, first things first, we're going to slot in our USB port. This is the easiest to get out of the way now because it's much harder to get this in there later on in the build. Mind you, it's going to be a tight fit, but that's by design, I promise. And this is where you're going to use that bracket. 2 bolts go right in here. Nice. That's not going anywhere. Now you're going to want to plug this into the first port. For some reason, I've always had issues when plugging it into the second port. Next is the HDMI adapter. We ended up going with an angled L-type cable instead because it made it way easier to work with. Plus, this one's actually cheaper. I would recommend slotting this in place first, then plugging it into the Pi. Otherwise, it gets really tricky to get it in there later. Next, the OTG cable for power. This one was also swapped out. The 3-hub adapter just wasn't necessary, and swapping this out gave us much more room to work inside the case. Okay, at this point, you're going to take the whole bunch of cables and just slide the board right under the ports. You might have to unplug a cable or two to get this in right. Because of the tension of the cables, we were able to make sure that this thing doesn't need to be screwed in because, I mean, there's no way this is going anywhere. It's really tight. All right, now we can start closing this up. Now, JP worked really hard to ensure that the lid sat flush. Older prototypes just had the lid just kind of stacked under the case. I think this is much better. Now, when you screw these in, you're going to want to be pretty firm and put pressure in since there's no threads and they're just kind of holding on by friction. Also, the screws have to be flush, otherwise the lid won't sit right on your desk. If you see your screw that looks like this, you're not done yet. Keep screwing until you can't see it anymore from the side. And lastly, of course, the finishing touch here, the logo. And that's it, we're done. I might be a bit biased, but I think this looks perfect. And I promise you, when you feel this in your hands, it's not gonna feel cheap, it's gonna feel solid, especially since you made it yourself. As an optional upgrade, this type of plastic is by nature pretty slippery, so I bought a roll of stick-on rubber, cut it to size, and placed it right over the screws. And look, yeah, we did end up using screws, sadly, but I think making them practically invisible was a pretty good compromise.
Oh man.
Also, I made this logo part a separate print, partly just in case it becomes an issue to upload, but I also wanted it to be customizable however you want. Like if you wanted to personalize it with something else, like say the PS symbols instead, or you can say Vita on it or something. What's this guy's name? I forget. Oh, and I also made a version for those who don't have an AMS, so don't worry, I got you. I also experimented with a bunch of other colors too. I think white plus any color honestly looks really slick, including this galaxy material that I found. Plus, I'll be honest, I just wanted something to match my keyboard. Or you can do like a duotone color scheme sorts, like this Starburst type one that I did, which I thought was really, really pretty. Or I call this one Espresso, for those more in love with the wood grain look. Not everyone might like this look, but I just know someone is watching this going, oh hell yeah, that one looks sick. I honestly have way too many of these prototypes that I built, and throwing them away kind of feels like a waste. So I think I'm probably just gonna give these out to Patreon members, if, just like a thank you for supporting the channel. I'm just gonna draw like 5 names in like January, and then whoever gets it, gets it. Just a way to say thanks for people who are trying to support the channel and all that. So if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description. Check out the Patreon, it's pretty cool, early access to videos. It's a great way to support the channel. All right, enough talking. I wanna show you some game and general tips that I think will get you the best experience with this dock. All right, so I got my sound connected and my PS4 controller connects automatically, so we're good there. So I set mine to 720p 60 FPS because, let's be honest, we're not really getting much more than that out of this little handheld. And because my PS Vita is modded, that means I can have a custom launcher for my Vita. If you want the Switch theme for yours, just to confuse your friends and such, the app is called Switch View UI. You install it just like any other app, and it looks really convincing, honestly. But I'll be honest, the real Switch UI is really boring in my opinion. So I'm using the RetroFlow launcher setup on my screen, which is perfect for a bigger display like this, where I can see all my games laid out really nicely, and it gets around that pesky 100 icon limit on the stock home screen. There's a lot of different styles too you can choose from if you just want to do like a list or a carousel or whatever, and they show off your games really, really well. Seriously, there are still a lot of really good Vita games out there you just can't play anywhere else. I would really suggest exploring the games the Vita has to offer.
Grab their ammo. Shit costs money, right?
Also, now that we have proper HDMI output from this thing, that means it could be perfect to hook up your capture card and stream and record your gameplay through OBS without having to affect your ability to play.
Okay. Well.
But of course, it's not just Vita games. Thanks to Adrenaline, if you want, you can have an entire library of PSP and PS1 games to play with too. I won't lie, these do look a little bit crunchy on a display this big, but it's still really cool that you can just have this ready to go on your Vita. And the coolest reason to do this, by far, is ports. Yes, I think this is one of the best reasons to do all of this because there are a ton of these really cool ports, official and unofficial, that will be awesome to play on a Vita since you can just use it like a Switch now. On the official side, of course, we have the Ratchet & Clank collection, straight up just the first 3 Ratchet & Clanks ported to the Vita, and they run really nice. The Jak and Daxter collection, which, this one kind of sucks at the port, maybe skip this one. And the God of War collection that has 1 and 2 from the PS2 on here, also really great picks. But of course, we can't forget about the unofficial ports on the Vita that modders have brought in that are really, really good on here. The Simpsons Hit and Run is one of the main big ones I wanted to talk about. I feel like younger kids now don't remember how big of a deal this game was when it came out. It was literally GTA Simpsons. Performance is fine. You can get some more frames in a lot of these ports if you use something like PS V-Shell to overclock your Vita. A lot of old Rockstar games have also been ported solely out of the love for these games, I feel like.
You look like you'll fit right in.
Both GTA San Andreas and GTA 3 are ported onto here. And of course, there's so many other homebrew ports that make the Vita worth playing nowadays.
This is the Android version? What is this? Oh wow, no, it really is just the Android version. That's okay, cool. I mean, sure, yeah, I'll give it a shot.
If you want to check out more of them, you can install the VitaDB app and download them from there. Mind you, this will only get you the required VPK files. They'll be missing the actual game files, which you actually got to rip yourself for legal reasons. But once you drag and drop them in, the game should just run. It's really, really neat. Okay, I hope you're starting to see now what's possible with this thing. This dock makes this Vita feel like a completely new console. It's like a Vita and a PS TV all in one. And I'm still not done yet. I still want this to be like an ongoing updated project, so we still want to do more for this project. For example, we still want to be able to make an OLED version for this, so you can plug in your the original cable for the OLED charger and just plug it in. It should just work. We want to add a power button that you can just print and just drop in. I think that'd be really, really cool, because right now we're just unplugging it and plugging it to turn it on and off. We want to refine a little bit more about the way that the Vita actually sits on the dock, because right now it's a little bit wobbly, and I don't really like that. Maybe try to find a way to close this up without using any screws, but we'll try. But there's a bunch of other issues that we still want to address too. We still want to make more improvements to this, but I'm happy enough with this version to release it as a version 1. So of course, we're uploading all of the files that we made so you can make your own. I'll leave the Maker World link in the description. 100% free. I want to say I want to be able to sell these eventually, so you can just buy the shell and then just assemble it yourself for those who don't have a 3D printer. But realistically, I can't do that unless I know exactly how much interest there is in actually making a bulk haul of these. Because if I go all in on making these and it turns out there's only 4 people that want to buy one, I'd rather just print it myself and just ship it to them. So I want to gauge interest. If you are interested in buying one, I'm going to leave a Google form that you can input your info, and then if we do end up selling these, we'll let you know ASAP. More important than ever, I just want to keep the Vita scene alive. The Vita was one of my very first avenues into modding stuff, and I want to contribute to the scene in the way that I know how. So consider this my contribution to the scene. I can't wait to see what you do with it. Again, big thank you to the people that helped me on this project, including Joey, aka Flo, who answered any of the questions that I had along the way, and of course, JP, who helped me an insane amount with the modeling side. I offered to pay him for his time, but he just wouldn't accept any money. He's just a really amazing guy. He's generally just doing this for the love of the game. So if there's any way you want to say thank you, honestly, just check out his channel, watch one of his videos. I think that would really, really make his day. I really hope you like this project. Go download it. Let me know what you think. Join our Discord too if you end up needing help. And tag me on Instagram or Blue Sky. So send me pictures of the docs you end up printing. I love seeing stuff like that. All right, I'll see you in the next year and talk to you soon.